I promise it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. You know, when you go to those conferences, I do a lot of conference speaking, and you're sitting in the audience and you get those slides and it's like the writing's so tiny and it's like, nobody can read this. And they say, we'll share the slide pack afterwards. It's like, it's just awful, isn't it? Yes? Great. This is going to be an interactive session. I'm going to ask questions because you're going to get to ask me questions. And just to sort of set the scene, I'm going to stay for the whole day because I couldn't get a flight straight out from here. And I didn't want to fly another 22 and a half hours to get there. But I wanted to get started. So this is about going exponential with your career. And what does that mean for you? Going exponential means something different for everyone. But hopefully I'll take you through my journey a little bit and then we'll sort of unpack that a bit. And then you'll have a bit of a view of what exponential means to me. I did want to say, and thank you, Lindsay, and the team here at House of PMO for the invitation, for buying copies of my latest book. I'll get to that at the end of the presentation and what it is that it's all about and why you have a copy. But one thing I did want to say is that as a CEO, having come through a project management office pathway, I absolutely know how important it is to have a PMO in an organisation. But my firm belief, and now I could be completely wrong here, but I'll get a show of hands from people who actually believe what it is that I'm about to say. I absolutely believe that a PMO needs to be a function in of itself, not a part of IT, not a part of HR, not a part of some other function. You act as the advocates of the business into each function, and then you act back as that advocacy back into the IT functions and those sorts of things. So from my viewpoint, that's where a really healthy PMO lives and makes a difference. I was speaking to a colleague yesterday, in fact, as she took me for a 30,000-step walk through London, seeing things that I'd never seen before. And I have been here a lot of times, and it was fabulous. But I talked a little bit about that idea that knowing what the PMO does and where it needs to sit and how it needs to behave is so important in an organisation. I think we get it wrong. It's the same as change and transformation. That's my core, transformation and change. And I get so sick and tired of having CEOs, CIOs, CFOs actually, let's just say. Any CFOs in the room? Because I might annoy a few people here. I never go for, if the role says reporting into CFO, I'm no thank you. But what I've learned in that space is that change is not an HR function. Change really sits in with PMO because you are the drivers of change and the drivers of delivery into an organisation, and that makes your role incredibly important. So I would like you to give yourselves a big round of applause, firstly, for the work that you do in the PMO space. Thank you. So should we get started then? I've only got I think it was about 36 slides, wasn't it? I think, yeah, we ran that, yeah, about that. No, I kid you. So we talk about PMO to CEO, but that's not where I began. This is 21-year-old Mary-Beth. When I was young, I wanted to be a singer. It's all I wanted to do. In fact, it was the decision that I made when I was 15. And I remember having the conversation with my parents and saying to them, Mommy, Daddy, I don't want to be a doctor. I'm changing all of my preferences into my senior years at school. I want to be a singer and a performer. 15-year-old me, now if I reflect back, watch them die a little inside. But it's what I wanted to do, and it was me, it was everything, and that's all I talked about. I'm going to be a singer, I'm going to be a famous singer. I'm going to be Kylie Minogue, I'm going to be famous, that's what I'm going to be. And I thrashed that out for about 7 years. And I wasn't famous, had no real plan, I just knew I was fabulous and I was going to be up on stage and I was going to be performing and singing for everybody. And then I got to a point with singing. In fact, I remember the day. My bandmate, who soon became my husband, yes, I was Yoko Ono in that. My bandmate and I were playing at a wedding. So that's what we did. We played at weddings, we played at parties, we played at grand finals for football clubs. We did those sorts of things. We played in pubs, all totally glamorous. We're playing this wedding and it was 6 hours of performing, which is a lot of singing, a lot of work. And they asked me in that 6 hours to sing Mustang Sally 9 times that night. There is nowhere on God's green earth that it is okay to ask a singer to sing Mustang Sally that many times in one night. The lads here said, should we play Mustang Sally for when you get up on stage? I said, oh my God, no, please. And I remember lugging the gear back into the car and saying to my partner, if I have to sing that bloody song one more time, I'm going to die. And it was that moment that I realised, oh God, I don't want to do this anymore. In your careers to date, have you had that moment where it's like, I can't do this job anymore? Hands, show me. If you haven't gotten there, you'll get there. Trust me, it's coming. You're going to be doing this for 40 years, so, hey, it's going to happen at some point. At that moment of realisation, I was terrified. Everyone knew me as a singer. Everyone knew me as a singer. And I had to make a shift and a change, and I had no clue. I didn't know what that was going to be. I was so lost, flapping in the wind, not knowing what to do, not having a plan, not having any sort of a view. But what I did know is that I didn't want to do that anymore. And I looked at all of my friends who worked in the corporate space in Australia, and I coveted that. I looked at that and I just thought, oh, it'd be so nice to get up go to work at 9 and finish at 5 and have my evenings to myself and not have to go and work in a club, and in the evenings over the weekends. Little did I know, my God, it's just tragic, isn't it, that we have to do that. But for somebody that had been lugging gear in and out 4 or 5 times a week, augmenting income with working in hospitality, doing those sorts of things, and feeling as if I was not getting anywhere in my career and where it was that I wanted to be, I knew I needed to change. I talk a lot about don't be afraid to pivot, be afraid not to. Because I shudder to think if I hadn't just lent into that discomfort, where I would be today. So I decided, you know what, I don't know where I want to work, I don't know what it is that I want to do. I'm going to do temping. Now you have that concept here. Does anyone know what a temp is, an office temp? Yeah, some of you. In Australia, that's completely gone now, and everyone looks at me and all the younger people look at me going, oh, she's so old. Temping, you go in 1, 2, maybe a couple of weeks and that's it, and then you leave and you move on. And I figured I don't know what industry I want to work in. I don't know what it is that I want to do. So I think I might actually go into temping because that will at least give me a view. It'll give me a view of what I don't like at least. So I thought, that's easy. I'll just get a job as an office temp. I went for 30 interviews and got rejected every single time for office temping work because all they saw me as was a singer. This is pre-social awareness, those sorts of things. I can't think of the word, it's just gone out of my brain, but it's social media, it's gone, it's pre that, but my brand, I was known as a singer because whenever I put a resume forward, it was just all the stuff that I'd done from a singing perspective. No one would give me a go. The only thing I had was the resilience of being a performer, because when you're a performer and you audition, I would go for hundreds of auditions, cattle calls. Does anyone know what a cattle call is? Yeah, you do. Who watches Britain's Got Talent? You watch all that? They've got the number on the chest and you're laughing at that guy that stands up there and he cannot sing and you're like, oh my God, what are you doing, dude? We get that your mum tells you can sing, but you're rubbish. Yeah, that show, that's a cattle call. So you go in, and if you don't look what they want, look the part, don't have the range that they want you to hit, etc., you don't even sometimes get a chance to open your mouth, although you have spent weeks and weeks and weeks practicing and perfecting what you want to display on stage so you get a part. And so you learn to be resilient as a performer, and I learnt that. But at my 31st interview, I walked in and the lady looked at me and she said, "Gosh, you look so familiar." I said, "Oh, do I?" She said, "Oh, I saw you singing at that wedding. You were singing Mustang Sally all those times." And I was like, "Oh, dear God, it's going to haunt me forever." But she said to me, "I find it really interesting. Take me through the process. What does it take for you to be a singer? What is that?" I said to her, "Okay." I said, "Well, I have 3 agents. I need to work with my agents. I need to work out what gigs are coming. I need to meet with the, if it's a bride and groom, I need to meet with the bride and groom, take them through this playlist, etc., so they can see what songs we have and decide whether they want us to perform at their wedding. Then I have to go to the venue itself and then look at the size of the venue and make sure that the PAs that we hire actually have the right capacity to fill that space with music. And then I need to work out the logistics of getting in and out of that venue, etc., what time I need to be there, etc., etc." And I took her through all of that. And she was furiously making notes, writing notes down. And then she said to me, "Oh, that's really interesting. You've got project management, stakeholder engagement, logistics, budget management." And now I knew she was saying words. I had no idea what they meant. And she said, "I think I've got some work for you." I got my very first temping assignment for 2 weeks. This is really going to show my age. At a little company in Melbourne called Apple Computer Inc. I remember that it was Apple Computer Inc. and not Apple Computers because the general manager had an absolute go at me when I said, "Good morning, Mary-Beth, speaking Apple Computers." And he said, "It's not Apple Computers with an S, it's Apple Computer." And I thought, oh, well, that company's not going anywhere. They had the old Macintoshes, they had Newtons on the shelves. Does anyone remember a Newton? We've still got a Newton. Still doesn't work. And so what it did was it introduced me to this world of IT, of curiosity, of innovation, of all of these things that I had no idea. This is the early 90s, so this stuff didn't exist. EFTPOS terminals didn't exist. None of this existed. But it gave me my first go at it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about North Stars. Does everyone know what a North Star is? Yeah, your bosses talk about North Stars all the time. Do you actually even know what they're really talking about in your office when they talk about the North Star? No, didn't think so. I never knew that. It was like, I don't care what you're thinking about. I just want to look at my little microcosm in this organisation. However, my North Star at that point was just to be an office temp. And I put this up here because this shows you each of the key milestones. These are only key milestones in my career journey. Some of the things that I did, but each of those at one point represented a North Star for me. Can you all read that at the back of the room? And it's supposed to be squiggly because nothing's ever straight-lined, is it? Nothing that we do is ever straight to the next point, to the next point. It's kind of like your first date. Who remembers their first date with their significant other? Yeah, you go out for that date. Was it nice? Yeah, mine wasn't. I just thought, what a dick. A couple of steps backward, a couple of steps forward. Suddenly I'm married, have a child. Oh my God, I don't know where that happened. But it's the same in your career. Sometimes you go on a date, sometimes you might be with somebody for a while and then you want to quit them, just like you want to quit a job, or like you want to quit a business. And it's okay to do that, but it's also okay to know that your career is never going to be a straight line. It's never going to be straight up to the top. It could be up, sideways, a little bit, a couple of steps backward. But it's always going to be your career if you create a North Star and you actually know where it is that you want to go with it. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. sort of that creation of North Stars. Now, how I do that is I actually have this little spreadsheet. Yes, I still use spreadsheets, and though I work in IT, nothing wrong with a good spreadsheet, right? I don't want to use that PMO tool. Spreadsheet can do the job, can't it? Do you like that? As you're looking at all the tools out there, you're going, oh, this looks like so much hard work. Let's just use a spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet, and on that spreadsheet, it is what I call a joy matrix. And I look at every single role, every single job I've ever been in, and I rank its joy. How much joy did that bring me? Now, sometimes the job brings you great joy at the start and then it sort of wanes off at the end, but I really look at those things, those attributes of the roles that really made me think, wow, this was an amazing job. I had that experience at a startup. Who's worked in a startup before? Oh my God, you're like cowboys in that space and it's so exciting. It's like, let's just put that into production. Let's put it in now. But it hasn't been tested. I don't care. And it's great. So you sit back and you think, wow, that's wonderful. And then you're trying to fix it because all your customers are getting really angry at you. But I loved that. I loved that excitement. So how do you get that every time into a new job? So I measure jobs by how much joy they bring me. What are the things that I really like about them? And then I also write things down like my transferable skills. Had the lovely lady at the temping agency not shown me what transferable skills are, I never would have done that. But in knowing what my transferable skills are, I can bring those to the fore when I go into an interview. If you don't know what your transferable skills are, start thinking about that, start writing them down. What you'll have when you go for a job interview, if you do starting to look for another job, is you'll have that recency effect. You'll just think about the stuff from the last position or the last two positions, but your transferables can be right across your entire career. I started out in Hungry Jack's. Do you have that here? Burger King, Hungry Jack's, fast food. McDonald's, as an example, yeah? What I didn't realise about working there was that I just love a good process. And I love lean, like I love a lean process. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I love that stuff. Even now I'm like, oh, we can make that leaner. And I'm a CEO, and I'm still thinking about that because I really love it. So I know that there are certain things that bring me joy, but I can also weave those into the story of when I interview. I'm going to say this, and this is because I work in diversity, equity and inclusion now in that space, that for the women in the room, if you see a role and you only have maybe at the 10 key criteria, you only have 4 or 5 of those, apply for it anyway because your male counterparts will. The reason I say that is you will have transferable skills for at least 1 or 2 of the other key criteria. And if you go for a job where you have all 10 key criteria, what are you going to learn there? So for me, I got into that temping job. And then I got offered an opportunity. Who knows what a sponsor is? Who knows what a coach is? Who knows what a mentor is? You'll realise they're all different, right? I used to work in gaming and wagering. So a gaming company, I don't know what you have over here, but in Australia we've got like, 137 online gaming platforms, and I worked for one of those. The tech was amazing and it was a startup, and I quite like a startup because it's quite messy. But I came up with this lovely little analogy because when I used to walk into that office, and this was only 18 months ago, mind you, I'd walk into that office and it was like walking into my 15-year-old son's bedroom. It just didn't smell as bad sometimes. But the analogy I've got here is a coach. A coach helps you win the game. Your line manager, right? Helps you prioritise things. A mentor helps you win the season. Yeah? So they're looking at your career, helping you sort of build on that. The sponsor gets you that sponsorship deal, it gets you on the pitch, and that's what you want. You want that person that's in your court. This is the person that's going to come up to you and say to you, as they said to me, hey, Mary-Beth, I think you could run this technical delivery department in our transport and logistics company. because we are looking at rolling out and installing point of banking, point of sale and automatic teller machines. This is in the early 90s. This stuff didn't exist in Australia. And he said, I see something in you. I was like, I can't do that. I'm an office temp. That's where I got my first leadership role. And because I looked at that opportunity and thought, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? Man, I've been on stage. He's not going to ask me to sing Mustang Sally 9 times, so that's okay. I reckon I can do this. And ever since, each opportunity that's arisen has come through from my network. I actually haven't applied for roles. I've networked. I've gone to events. I've met people. I've talked to them about the problems that they are experiencing and the problems and how I think that that could possibly be solved. I've always worked in service of others because that's really for me where the joy is. I really like people. There are people out there, and don't get me wrong, there are people out there that don't like people. Do you know people that don't like people? My husband hates people. He's like, I can't believe you're going to another networking thing. And I said, but I like people. COVID killed me. Oh my God, because I need people. And I find people really interesting. I find their problems even more interesting because sometimes I think, ooh, I've experienced that before. Maybe you could try this, this, or this. And when you are in service of others and it's not just about you, it's not about you and what you do, they see you in a different light and then opportunity does arise. So then I needed to kind of build the foundation. At this point, I really started to think about what I truly wanted. And if we just cast your mind back to that very first slide that showed the career map on there, I had that CIO role. It was about, at the time, it would have been early 2000s, where a CIO was actually a role. Didn't exist in the early 90s, and not in Australia, so there wasn't a North Star you could look for because it didn't exist. You could either be Chief Financial Officer or Chief Executive Officer, but there was no concept of a Chief Information Officer because IT was just in its infancy. So that role didn't exist to sort of have a North Star for. So I did lots of IT manager type roles, which was the equivalent in the logistics space. Then I got to the point where I had been working in transport and logistics for over 20 years. Yeah, I know, I don't look it, right? I had the guy that drove me from the airport to the hotel when I got here on Monday morning. I told him how old I was, and he said, oh, you look 35. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm keeping that. I am keeping that. I'm gonna, yeah, so. But yeah, 20 years in transport and logistics, and what I realised is, oh my God, I'm getting institutionalised. I only know the one industry. And I could not break through the glass ceiling in that industry because it's very, very underrepresented, so very male-dominated. And I could not get to that next level up. I was an IT manager and that was great, but that was all I was ever going to be there. And I realised that what I needed to do was make a shift and do something radical, another radical change. Who's been in that space before? We've had to make a radical shift, a radical change. We've had to actually change the industry you might really love because you know that it's no longer serving you as much as you are serving it. Terrifying. Really terrifying. It was another moment where I thought, geez Louise, I have to leave everything that I know and move into something that I just don't know. But an opportunity came to run the PMO for a little company in Australia, and you might not have heard of it over here, but I thought it's a little company called Specsavers. So I ran their PMO in Australia for the 600 stores that we have in our region. And I went to the interview and the HR director said to me, oh, worked in transport and logistics for a long time, do you think you're institutionalised? I was quite confronted by the question because I thought, oh my God, I've prepared for this, but I don't have an answer to that question. And I said, well, no, not really. I'm an adaptable leader. And I can also adapt my transferable skills to any industry, with which he liked that response and I was given that role. But you see there that it's a straight line. It was a lateral move for me. However, it was a calculated lateral move because I knew that I would not be seen as a C-suite executive if I stayed in transport and logistics, and I needed to do something completely different. And Specsavers is allied health and retail, so it gives you both. And so I took that role knowing that it was a lateral move. So you know how I said to you before, your career is not a straight one line. It's not that straight line to any role. It's going to be backwards and forwards. Actually, so in 2019, I decided to upgrade my car. This is June 2019. And I decided I wanted to buy a Tesla. Does anyone know much about Tesla or Elon Musk? I mean, I know he's a bit of a nutter right now, so he's ruining Teslas for everybody. But it was at that time, Teslas, it was that idea that they're either going to stay in business or they're going to go out of business. And I said to my husband, because we're both tech people, and like that anything on the bleeding edge, he said, look, the company could go bust tomorrow and we'll have a car that nobody's going to support. But it drove so nicely, so we said, screw it, we're going to buy one. So I bought a Tesla. It is a blue Tesla, that is not my Tesla. When I did the pack, I thought, I'll put a photo of my Tesla, but it was so dirty and I just didn't want to wash it. So I grabbed a photo, but that's what she looks like. Her name is Contessa, and she is a Model 3 long range. She's actually my second. But when I bought my first Tesla, it was in 2019, and I got that in December. And the driving experience is fantastic. Satellite navigation, not so much. So I punched into that. I thought, I'll just punch into it, go home and see where it routes me, and I'll just let the car take me there. Oh my God, it took 2 hours to get home. And it took me through all these little side streets. I'm like, I didn't even know the street existed in Melbourne. I have no idea where I am going. But I thought, you know what? I just have to trust the process. She's much better now. Because as each iteration has come through, and you all work in a PMO, so you understand iterations, you understand all of that, but as each iteration of software came through, it became better and better and better. But what I realised is if you trust the process and you have a North Star, then even in your career, if you have to take a backward step, it is not a failure. Who's told you all your life that you have to move forward every time? Every step has to be forward. Has to be up to the next. Anybody get told that as kids? And when you then realise, man, I have to take either a lateral move or a backward step, you feel a bit like a failure. You're not a failure. It is really about how you use that opportunity, because every role you take is a new opportunity, a new network of people, a new way to rebrand yourself, to be seen as something else. So I was head of change delivery at Specsavers and I wanted to be a CIO. I was thinking, I don't know how to do this. So I engaged an executive coach and she worked with me on branding, purely, only on branding. My resume looked really good, but my LinkedIn profile was less than. My network itself wasn't great because it was all transport logistics and I wanted to be pushing into something new. So I spent the next 2 years curating my LinkedIn profile to within an inch of its life. I created my own hashtag, CIO for change, because it was where I wanted to go, but I was also in that change and transformation space. And I thought it was an interesting play on words. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, and I will invite every single one of you to link with me, and I'll have a QR code at the end of this presentation. But have a look at that, because you'll actually get my brand straight away. I do not have every single role I've ever been in. I do not have every single key criteria that I've ever worked in. I do not have any of that, but I have a lot around my brand. I worked on my internal brand. Do you know what that is, your internal brand? Few nods. So no hands. Hardly any of you know what your internal brand is. It is in your organisation. It is not enough. So it's not what you know. It is not who you know. It is who knows what you know. Okay? So you need to be in your organisations, you need to be seen, you need to have a seat at the table. You're in a PMO role. You should have a seat at the table. So that's your internal brand. Your external brand is this sort of an event. Go to these events. At least one a quarter if it's available to you. One every 6 months. Get out there, be seen, talk to people, connect. And when you connect, make it a really worthwhile connection. Don't just do the numbers. It's not like, oh, link with me, link with me, link with me, link with me. It's not about that. It's really have a conversation and keep that conversation going, because you don't know where that's going to lead. That conversation today could be a sponsorship in 6 months. And if you went back and had a look at all of your sponsors, you could probably trace back to when you met them. And then your virtual brand. So there's the three. And your virtual brand is that social media space. Just a point, LinkedIn is not Facebook. I know it's trying to be Facebook, and it really is very frustrating, but it's a professional platform. So this is where you can put your thought leadership and those sorts of things so that you are seen as a thought leader. I spent 2 years curating my branding to get me to the CIO role. The one thing I did, however, that was a true differentiator was in 2020, I released my first book. The book you have on the tables, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment, the book you have on your tables is my third book. I published my first book. I self-published it. And when I was going for the CIO role, and that was a global CIO role with a team of 145 people across the globe, $100 million budget, bigger than anything I'd ever done. I went for that role and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I've got gaming and wagering in my background. I quite understand that. So I'm going to go for that role. When I landed the role, after 5 interviews, my hiring manager said to me, I said, why did you hire me? What were the key things? He said, you and the other candidate were neck and neck. He said, but you wrote a book and it showed thought leadership. And he said, I want somebody who shows thought leadership. Now, I'm not saying everybody in the room write a book, but know what it is that differentiates you and really hone in on that. Only reason I wrote a book is that I said to my coach, I'm bored. I think I might go and do a doctorate. I'll do a doctorate in change. It'll be really cool, you know, Dr. Mary-Beth Hosking. And she said, what's that going to do for your career? I said, oh, I don't know, but it'll kill 8 years, won't it? Because it'll take me 8 years to do a doctorate. She said, why don't you write a book? She said, you'll probably get more from it. And she was absolutely right. So I wrote the book and I got the job. What is really interesting, and I did some statistics, I looked at some statistics. Now these are in Australia, so I'm pretty sure that they would be something similar here, is that who in this room is looking to get to the C-suite? Who's looking that might be your North Star? CIO or CEO? Anybody? It's entirely possible. The pathway to CIO from PMO, it's about 19% of CIOs started their careers from a PMO perspective. 30% of CEOs now come from a CIO space. That's going to shift even more. This technology is now no longer just a service for some businesses. Some businesses, it's all that they have. So if you are thinking that you might want to get to the C-suite, know your transferable skills. Know what brings you joy. Understand why you want to move to that space. And then start branding and working your way and have a North Star and focus on that North Star. Who does project management here? Who's a project manager or has done project management? Some of you? The key with a really good project plan, it's okay to tap when it's sort of going a little awry. So if your North Star does shift and change, it's okay, because it's your North Star. Nobody out there can tell you that it's not the right way to go or where to go. Just don't lose hope and just focus on your branding and those things and focus on where you really want to be. So for me, going exponential was then getting to CEO. I remember actually meeting with the CEO of PointsBet, the company I was with, the gaming and wagering company, and saying to the CEO there, well, I want to be CEO one day. And I'd only just taken the CIO role. And he said, wow, okay. He said, I'll help you. I'll help you with understanding budgets. I'll help you with those sorts of things. And he was magnificent, and he did. He kept to his word. He was a fantastic man. And then an opportunity arose for CEO. And I sat back and I thought, am I ready? CEO for a not-for-profit. So a not-for-profit, my not-for-profit is fully sponsorship funded, fully volunteer-led, which means that I have zero leverage with any of the volunteers. We run our programs by their good graces. It has taught me the next level of leadership that I never thought I needed to know, but rallying a team of volunteers who all have full-time jobs to give an extra 10 to 20 hours a week to my organisation is a task in of itself, and I love it because it's taught me that, yes, I can lead a team of 145 people with a $100 million budget, but I can also lead a team of people who don't actually have to do anything for me. And that's a true testament to good leadership. So I took the CEO role. And now I'm wondering, what's going exponential going to mean for me? I don't know. I'm hoping that the book that you've got in front of you will help. But I wanted to say, this is my team. This is in my house in Melbourne. We are all volunteers. We don't have an office. I work fully remote. And so in order to get my team together, I have to invite them over, put on a little bit of a spread, and then we talk about the direction of the organisation. But I wanted to call them out because these are amazing people, and you cannot, as a leader in your space, do anything without an amazing crew beneath you. And the more amazing they are is a testament to the leadership of the people in the room. I like to pause at this moment because I'm really proud of this team of people. They do an amazing job with very little money to support women in STEM, so science, technology, engineering and maths. So what you see now on screen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the book because you're looking at this book going, why do we have this book? What is this book? So I was working in PointsBet, little company. It was a scale-up. So do you know the difference? There's start-up, scale-up, small to medium business, then enterprise, and then sort of global enterprise, big, bigger, bigger. So I was working in PointsBet with my colleague, Adi Kalra, who's a co-author on this book with me. And we just walked out of a meeting where the leadership had decided that they were going to separate product from technology and have them as two independent functions, which doesn't work if you're working in an agile environment because product and tech have to work hand in hand. And we walked out of this meeting thinking, why are they making these ridiculous decisions? And why is it that nobody seems to know what the direction of the company is? Why is it nobody actually has a view of where we're going and has no vision of what we're wanting or trying to achieve? It's only been in business for 4 years and it was a startup for the first 3. And then we said, and how can it be so bloated with so many superfluous staff members? I don't even know what they do half the time. Some people are just walking around with a piece of paper all day looking busy. And what we realised is that the organisation had lost its way. It no longer knew what its vision was. And it was treating the IT function as if it were a service provider. The whole business was built on IT. It's an online platform, so everything it does is about the platform. It's all about IT. But to treat IT as a service provider really was doing that function a disservice. And so we decided that we needed to write a book on how you would set up your organisation in a way that everybody actually knows the vision, feels empowered to work within the organisation, and be able to work cohesively across the entire business, from the operational level, the technical hub, through to your departments or your tactical positioning, and your strategic, so your C-suiters. And so we wrote not another digital transformation, because I've been through 6 digital transformations. Who's been through a digital transformation? Who's been through a successful digital transformation? I love how you're all laughing. None of us go into this thinking we're going to fail, but because we go into this thinking that the problem in our organisation is that the tech function isn't working and that's all that needs to be fixed, we are already set up for failure, because that's not usually where the problem is. So the little diagram you see on the screen is the plane analogy, we like to call it. So think of this. Who's taken a flight ever? I've done this in a room of people, and then I've got that one person that has never taken a flight, and I'm like, how can that possibly be? Anyway, I'm hoping that every one of you have taken a flight. So you bought your ticket, right? You knew exactly where you were going, didn't you? You knew what time your plane left, and you know what time it's due to arrive, yes? I've just flown 22 and a half hours. I know that tomorrow I've got to get on a flight at 3 p.m. I know exactly where I'm going. I know what those stops are. When I go and I take my luggage, they take my luggage and they put a tag on it. The baggage handlers know which plane it's going in. They know, they have visibility to where I'm going. The traffic controller knows where that plane is going. The pilot knows where they're flying. The crew on the flight know exactly what needs to take place. And every single passenger on that flight all knows that they're on the right flight, one would hope. Imagine what it would be like to work in an organisation where you had absolute visibility from start to end of every single thing you worked on. That you felt completely empowered and knew exactly what it was that you were working on that was going to help that organisation achieve its strategic intent to get you to the end point. Does anybody work in an organisation like that, where you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what the purpose is, and what the strategic intent of the organisation is, and how you're tracking towards that? How amazing would it feel if you knew all of that? It'd be pretty bloody good, wouldn't it? That is the 10X generation state, and the reason that you've got a book here is that hopefully you'll read this and you'll give this to somebody more senior in your team or somebody in the C-suite and say, hey, you've got to read this. Because if you get it right, every single one of you in your organisation knows exactly what you're all working toward, and your organisation can go exponential. You will push through the stratosphere and have the most extraordinary career for every single person in your business, but also have the most amazing organisational culture. And the reason you've got the book is because the only way it will succeed is to have a good, strong PMO to help the organisation make the revolutionary change that is written about in this book. You straddle the entire organisation. You know, or should know, all the key decision makers across your organisation. The PMO's function is incredibly vital in making change and transformation possible. And it is in the art of the possible that we're now living. So as I said before, you can join the 10X generation, which is on the top. Does anyone know what 10Xing is? Before the 10Xing side of things from an IT perspective, 10 times 10 times 10. That's the idea that you get hundreds of thousands of things done faster, more efficiently. So that's 10X, and it's the 10X generation. That's the little play on words. And then the bottom is my LinkedIn. Please link with me on LinkedIn. I love to keep conversations going. I have few followers and people that enjoy some of the content that I write about. I'm going to leave you with this. I started out as a singer. Doesn't feel like it was that long ago. I look at the wrinkles on my face and realise how much it was, but it doesn't feel that long ago. But if I hadn't chosen to make that pivot, I'd still probably be one of those sad lounge singers in a pub somewhere thinking, I hate my life and I don't want to be here anymore. So don't be afraid to pivot. Be afraid not to. Don't allow your career to stagnate. I've given you some stats. You know that it's entirely possible to get to the C-suite and the roles that you're in, but also know how vital the roles that you are in are. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Now, loud applause.
So my question is around senior leadership. So a lot of people in this room, and myself included, when you're working in specific projects or programs and you're trying to get that engagement from a senior leader, what are some strategies to kind of do that? Because you're speaking from someone who's come through the chain.
Yep.
And you probably represent a good persona of what senior leadership are looking for, and it often is a sticking point with getting projects to move. So how do you get engagement from a senior leader?
So senior stakeholders, getting engagement from senior stakeholders. Who takes your senior stakeholders out for a coffee and a chat? Some of you do that. Get to know them, they're people. Understand their why. What's in it for them? But understand this, that the what's in it for them can change. So today you might, do you do a little bit of a matrix of all your stakeholders on a particular project and what it is that they're hoping to get out of this, how much of their career is on the line for this particular piece of work, etc. Do you know all those sorts of things? If you don't know that, that's the sort of stuff you would want to be knowing. You want to know who your senior stakeholders are. They're the decision makers. Then know the next tier down. Then know the next tier down from that. Network the room, basically understand and know and understand what's in it for every single one of them. It's Change Management 101. You've got to tap into what's in it for me, and it's got to be more than just my budget. It's my budget, so that's what's in it for me, and I've got to stick to my budget. There is something more in there, and you need to tease that out, and you need to have a relationship with the individuals. Get to know them as the people that they are. Because if you don't have that sort of a relationship, it's really hard when things go awry. I was saying something earlier to one of the people outside. I was sort of chatting when I first got here, and bad news doesn't get better with age, right? So you want to get that out on the table. If you've got a really good, strong relationship with the key stakeholders, you can have those conversations. But I always go into those conversations with yes, it's going off the rails, this is what's happening, but here's my idea of a solution. Does that work for you? And I can have those conversations because I also know what's in it for them. It's more about saving face for a lot of senior leaders. I have put my money where my mouth is, and I have said that this is going to work. Now, you're a PMO function, you're there to make sure that it gets delivered, but there are going to be things that are out of your control. There'll be vendors, etc., the things that are out of your control, but you're there to make sure that you've got that bird's eye view of everything so that the senior executive doesn't have to know that. So it's about building those key relationships, and the best way to do that, take them out for a coffee. Ask them what keeps them awake at night, because I think that those things, if you can tap into that, then that's really important. And sometimes senior leaders just like to be talked to like people.
My question is, how did you overcome some of the barriers or challenges you might have experienced while aspiring to get to that CEO level? I'm asking simply because I have the aspiration, but some personal circumstances is not pushing me enough, and I've had to take some step back to just deal with those personal issues. So I'm at a stage where I want to launch further to my aspirations, but I can't simply because there are challenges that I need to deal with. So how have you been able to overcome that? Thank you.
I know a lot of women, you have kids and you take maternity leave and then you really want to focus on family, etc. And here's some heartwarming news, is that women, when they hit their 50s, is when their careers seem to take an upward trajectory. So it may just be a timing issue for you. Focus on the things that you have to focus on from a personal perspective first, because that's the only thing that really matters, doesn't it? At the end of the day, you need to, if it's a health thing, is it a family thing? Those are the things. No one's going to, you're not going to be on your deathbed saying, I wished I'd thrown in another 20 hours a week. You're not going to do that. So think of the things that are really important to you. But from a career perspective, there are barriers, especially there's the gender barrier, and then if you are a person of colour, etc., there are other barriers that you will automatically face. The key is to have really key networks in place and stakeholders that you can actually reach out to. I took a role, I left a business and an industry I absolutely loved to move into something I knew nothing about because I wanted to do something more. So sometimes you have to do that and completely shift and change and move into something that's a bit It's going to give us the opportunities, and sometimes that's what we have to do. And that's a really hard decision, but you make it, but have a clear plan in place. You saw my plan, it was all milestone driven. I've always had a plan. I have a 10-year plan now, although now it says in 10 years I want to retire. It's really weird when you write that down. I've been planning for years, and I wrote down, oh my God, I'm going to be there, I can retire. That's awesome. Not that I will, I'll probably keep doing things, but it's just a different milestone, isn't it? And then the 10-year plan on from that is going to be, which nursing home should I go into? Something like that. But hopefully that gives you some insight. Any other questions?
In your journey, have you encountered resistance and resilience when building your PMO? And if so, how did you overcome it? Because you will, everybody in this room probably know that as change professionals, we're very resilient to change.
Yes, no one likes change, do they? I actually believe that people don't like change when it's thrust upon them, but if you can really tap into what's in it for them and take them through the journey from the start, they're less reluctant, they're a little bit more with you if they understand the why and they can see the bigger picture and how it's going to help with an organisation or help the organisation be more profitable and do those sorts of things, because that then means job stability. So it's around that resilience piece, around putting in is he saying, is it about putting in the PMO and then having people come along that journey and understand the why the PMO is in place?
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I've been doing it this way for years.
Oh, it's not broken,
now
why
do
fix it?
Yeah.
It's the why. Sometimes it is that from a technology perspective, things are always evolving and changing. I think that individuals are getting used to that. But you will always have that one person that will want to work off system. Yep, the Excel spreadsheet. They're usually in finance. I'm bagging on finance because, oh my God, they're the ones with shadow IT. If you understand what shadow IT is, they're the ones that are like, oh, we've just put in this application. Can you support it now? And you're like, why, what? Everyone at some point is change resistant. If you cannot tap into why and what their underlying issue is, it's about having conversations with those individuals specifically, and you may spend a lot of time with them. I'll give you a really short story of I was implementing mobile data terminals. So there was a time where drivers in a logistics organisation were using paper consignment notes, yeah? But then we were putting them onto mobile data terminals. And I had one man that was so resistant to change, but over the 3 weeks I just spent working with him and taking him through the why of why we were doing it and how it would actually make his life easier once he got used to it. And what it really boiled down for him was that he was afraid that he was going to get it wrong. He was going to make a mistake, and he saw that as a massive failure. But as I said to him, I said, who's got kids in the room? When they're learning to walk, what do? They get up and they do that little shaky thing, and then they fall over on their bottoms, and then they get up and they do that little shaky thing, and eventually they take one step and then they fall over. They take the next step and they fall over. You'll learn more when you fail than when you get it right every time, and you'll actually appreciate it when you do get it right if you failed a couple of times. And that's what I took him through, and understood that his problem was his fear of failure, not so much using the mobile data terminal. So it is working out what is in it for them. And I will always come back to that, because that is fundamentally, as human beings, nobody wants to look like an idiot. Nobody wants to fail. I'm staying all day. Please come see me. I'm happy to sign your books. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.